Welcome, Ghosts, back to Bullet Catcher Gaming. We've been away for a little while, but we are back. I want to talk about Ghost Recon, of course. What is its legacy? Has it had a lasting impact on players, the gaming industry, the culture as a whole? And where does it fit within the kind of tactical shooter genre? I want to discuss this. So the legacy of Ghost Recon endures because it masterfully blends tactical realism with immersive storytelling, offering players a distinct alternative to traditional shooters. Since its debut, the franchise has consistently pushed the boundaries of military strategy gameplay, emphasizing, say, teamwork and planning and precision over, say, brute force. Though you can use brute force, obviously, if you want. But its adaptability across generations, ranging from, say, gritty early 2000 combat sims to expansive open-world experiences like Wildlands and Breakpoint. That's what's helped it stay relevant while preserving its kind of core identity. The balance of innovation and authenticity has cultivated a loyal fan base, just like yourselves with this channel. And it's cemented Ghost Recon as a cornerstone in the tactical shooter history. Now, there are tons of shooters that have been around for many, many years, but we can't talk about all shooters in regards to how it would sit, regards to legacy against other games. It is a tactical shooter after all. So what are the fundamentals? What is a tactical shooter? So I would say that it needs to contain realistic damage. So like 1 or 2 shots can kill, squad-based coordination, slower, more methodical gameplay, strategic use of cover, positioning and reconnaissance, and often includes, say, pre-mission planning or real-time commands. Now, these games attract players who want an immersion and they want to be challenged. It's not just about adrenaline, run and gun, that kind of stuff. So let's compare it to some of the key games that came out at the same time as Ghost Recon. So let's look back, say 1998, Rainbow Six, you definitely put that in there. That obviously has helped shape the genre. 1999, you could say, some people say SWAT 3. Others may not have played that game so much, but I do think it deserves a mention. 2001, Operation Flashpoint, I think definitely, it definitely helped lead to, say, like the Armor series, I think, which obviously defined military simulation for years after. But, it's the 2000s, obviously Ghost Recon being in there, but US Navy SEALs, obviously SOCOM, that was a huge game, though it hasn't been around as long. That really did cement a strong legacy. People still always talk favorably. Maybe not the last game. The last game was a bit of a hit and miss, but you could also include, say, Brothers in Arms from 2005 in there. It had really good squad tactics in that game. And then the 2010s, I suppose, you saw a decline and a kind of reinvention of how this genre kind of worked, the tactical shooter. Obviously, Rainbow Six Siege. Not everyone's cup of tea, I understand that, but it is, you can't deny that it has had, look at its longevity, for example. But obviously, Escape from Tarkov 2017 onwards, Ready or Not, obviously, which is now getting a console version as well from 2021's early access. You talk about obviously Ground Branch, 0 Hour, Insurgency, Sandstorm, games like that. Why do they matter? Why are they important? Obviously, the realism and the immersion. People want innovation in AI and squad control. Especially on PC, the community and modding culture is huge. I think it helps carry the franchise forward. And to a degree, you could argue this one way or another, but perhaps sometimes more of a niche fan base, Not saying it's a small fan base, but I think those people that really want that real tactical experience sometimes can be more niche. If you make a good Ghost Recon game, you basically want to be able to use niche and mix it with, just your standard gamer and have those settings to turn on and off. So, we want to have a look at Ghost Recon in general. So in the early 2000s, when first-person shooters were dominated by run-and-gun chaos, a different kind of war story was taking shape in the shadows. One where silence was deadlier than sound. One where patience, planning, and precision were your only allies. This, of course, is the world of Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. Originally launched in 2001 by Red Storm Entertainment, Ghost Recon wasn't just another military shooter. It was something more, something tactical, slow-burning, and rooted in realism. Its legacy would go on to shape the very idea of what a tactical shooter could be, influencing not just video games, but how games approached war and squad-based strategy and player agency. Let's have a journey through the past 2 decades to explore its legacy. Let's look at the legacy that Ghost Recon has put down and how it changed the battlefield forever. So when Ghost Recon arrived in 2001, it came from the mind of Tom Clancy, the author, famous for novels steeped in espionage and military realism. Players took control of an elite team of US Army's special forces, the Ghosts, sent into geopolitical flashpoints to carry out covert missions. When Ghost Recon, apart from obviously uncompromising approach to realism, there was obviously no health bar. One bullet could end you. And you didn't just play one soldier, you were directed an entire squad, issuing commands and carefully planning your approach. In an era when games like Medal of Honor and, say, Counter-Strike were more fast-paced and reflex-driven, Ghost Recon asked players to slow down and think. It created tension from explosions, but from the equal, quiet crawl through enemy territory, with danger lurking behind every tree and cover. And it worked. Critics praised its depth, and players respected its difficulty. It quickly became a cult hit and laid the foundation for a franchise that would span decades. Now, through the early and mid-2000s, Ghost Recon began evolving. The series continued with Ghost Recon Island Thunder, Jungle Storm, and then the ambitious leap into next generation with Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, or GRAW, in 2006. Now, GRAW obviously marked a turning point. It was built initially for the Xbox 360. It introduced a third-person perspective, enhanced visuals and futuristic gadgets like drone recon and heads-up displays. And suddenly the battlefield was not just about line of sight, but intel and coordination. It was a vision of near-future warfare that felt believable. It also brought something else: accessibility. While maintaining its tactical roots, GRAW offered a more cinematic experience, bringing new players into the fold. The multiplayer too became a key focus, setting standards for online tactical gameplay on consoles. So the sequel, GRAW 2, cemented that success with improved AI, tighter mechanics, and the kind of immersive co-op missions that would influence games like Rainbow Six Vegas and even Call of Duty's later Spec Op modes. But as the industry changed, so did Ghost Recon. By 2012, the series shifted again with Future Soldier, embracing tech-heavy sci-fi adjacent gear like optical camo and wrist drones. It was slick, fast, still grounded in tactics, but with a clear nod to modern gaming audience hungry for gadgets and spectacle. Then came 2017's Ghost Recon Wildlands, a radical reinvention. Set in a fictionalized Bolivia, Wildlands gave players something new: an open world, massive, detailed, and beautifully rendered. For the first time, you weren't just planning missions, you were living in a breathing war zone. You could approach missions any way you liked, with co-op at the center of the action. Wildlands was controversial. Some critics pointed to repetitiveness or a tonal inconsistency, but obviously we know that players love this game. It's the game that everyone talks about, especially on my channel over the years. It's the biggest selling of all the Ghost Recon games. It's gone open world, and I think that is the way that most of us want it to stay. Not everybody, but most of us. So obviously then comes Breakpoint in 2019. Intended as a darker, say more survival-focused follow-up, Breakpoint tried to push realism further. Players dealt with injuries, fatigue, limited resources, such. But its launch obviously was rocky. Critics and fans alike called out the bugs, clunky systems, bloated gear score mechanic that kind of felt totally out of place in a tactical shooter. The backlash was pretty strong. Ubisoft even publicly acknowledged that it made mistakes. They obviously went back to the drawing board, overhauled the mechanics, and reintroduced the option to turn off the loot system entirely. So Breakpoint became a lesson in identity, and this is really important. A wake-up call about its balancing innovation with what made the series special to begin with. And, it worked. Breakpoint evolved into a far better game post-launch. But, conversations had kind of shifted. We're all asking as fans, you, me, what is Ghost Recon about now? And, what should it be? It's a franchise that's never stood still. From its kind of hardcore tactical realism, open world experimentation, it has constantly evolved. It's pioneered squad control, influenced real-time tactics, things like that. But, it needs a DNA. Other games have a core DNA. And I think one of the things that we really need to look at here is you take a game, though it's not in the tactical shooter realm. If you have a look at a game like the original Modern Warfare 1, look at the DNA that game had within it. The DNA in that game can still be seen in Call of Duty today. That's how important having a DNA in your games are. And the reason why I want to know about, and I'm asking the question about Ghost Recon's legacy, is because I want to know what you think. What is Ghost Recon's legacy? Does it stand with some of these other games that we mentioned, the Rainbow Sixes and the SOCOMs and those types of games in the tactical shooter world, or against some of the newer tactical shooters like Ready or Not, Tarkov, things like that? Yes, they are all kind of different games, but they still sit within a genre. Is Ghost Recon at the top? Now, I love Ghost Recon. I've enjoyed pretty much every Ghost Recon game I've ever played, some better than others. But the DNA for me will always come back to Wildlands. Wildlands was the game that got the DNA right. And from Wildlands, that's where the DNA should have been taken forward for the next 20 years of Ghost Recon games, should have been built from that DNA. So with the leaks that we know about the new game, what do you think? Where do you think Ghost Recon is going? What do you think of Ghost Recon's legacy? That's what we really want to know. Tell us. We want to understand how you feel about Ghost Recon. How do you feel its legacy? Where does it sit? Let us know. I'd be really interested. This was just a kind of quick comeback video. We've got loads more to come. Let us know. Take care, and I will see you again on the next one. Bye-bye.